you. I think we'll make a start because we're at 7 o'clock. So good evening, everyone. This is the CFA's Fire Safety Essentials presentation tonight for Timboon and District. As my co-host from the CFA is Garth Wesson, and we're also lucky enough. I do let him speak from time to time. We are also lucky enough to have the captain of your Timboon Brigade, so Katie Millard. Welcome, Katie. And just at a couple of occasions, we'll be asking Katie her opinion on certain things, such as the vegetation and capacity of the brigade, things like that. I will continue now. This presentation should take about an hour, give or take, depending on the kinds of questions we have. Before I start any further, I'll do an acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So we're meeting tonight via Zoom webinar. So that means that you can't turn on your video or audio as an attendee. You'll be able to interact with us by answering polls when we put them up on the screen, so little questionnaires, or by using the chat function. We are recording this webinar, so we can't see or hear the audience, and the recording will only be the presentation of the slides that we see and the hosts talking. We will be showing you some animations, a short video and some photos throughout the session, but we don't have too many PowerPoint slides. Most of them are really background. So if you want, we do want you to interact throughout the session, and we'll explain how. The chat function. Yes, please. To use the chat function, you hover your mouse or your touchpad to see a speech box appearing, like the one in the little picture there. You can chat to myself, Garth, and Katie. We'll be answering any questions you have throughout the session. So it might look a little different if you're using a phone to join us, but the function should still be available to you. If you need help at all during the presentation, use the chat function, and one of us, the three of us, will assist. To talk only to the panellist and not the whole group, you can use a drop-down box in the chat function and select panellist. So let's have a little practice. If you drop in the chat function, please, where you're joining us from. I expect to see a few Timboons, but perhaps people are joining us from a different area or a nearby town.
Yes, we've got one Timboon already. Great. Oh, there's another Timboon. Timboon might be there. Oh. Someone from down Warrnambool joined us. Thank you very much for getting online.
Fantastic. So we got our fingers working for the chat function. The second activity will be a poll, one of those little questionnaires I mentioned. Now, this one has more than one question, so you may have to scroll down to answer the questions. They're quite general, and we cannot see who has answered what. First of all, we can't see the who. We get a percentage, and I'll share the results with you once we have them in. So the first question, how long have you lived in the area? Second question, have you been to a CFA meeting before?
And that's years, by the way. How many years have you lived in the area?
Oh, yeah. Third question, how did you find out about this session? So you can quote your sources. And the last question, if you rate your knowledge around fire.
while there. Give people another 10 seconds to finish up.
That's 10 by my count. So I'll end the poll and share the results with you. Then you can see what I see, which is basically a percentage rating. So we have people who've been living in the area for some time, definitely over 5 years, and some are over 10. In some places that we speak with, we need to talk about how many generations the family's been in before they're considered locals. So over 5 years, you'll have a good knowledge of the area. Right, so 2/3 of our audience have been to a CFA meeting before, and 1/3, this is a first for them. And again, we have a couple of variations on the theme here, finding out about the session recommended by friend, family, neighbour or so, and the CFA social media has been working for us as well. And knowledge around fire, some medium, and 1/3 of our audience high. So again, if you have any questions, ask us. If there's anything you'd like to point out, we're happy for the feedback. I'll stop sharing those results now. And we shall move on. Let's have a look at what we're aiming for people to learn with the session. This is an entry-level fire safety program. So it's the first program that the CFA runs, basically covering very basic issues on fire and fire safety. So we'll be looking at the local fire risks, what to expect from a fire, how do you know if there's a fire, planning and decision making, and surviving if those plans aren't working out in the situation. Some of the content you'll be viewing today may be distressing for some, especially if you have been involved in a fire before. So if you need to take time away from the screen, please do so. We'll be giving you a little intro before showing anything of that nature. And of course, you can rejoin us when you're ready. So, understanding our local fire risks. First of all, will be quite general. In the Victorian landscape, we're one of the most fire-prone areas of the world. In fact, we compete with California for that particular honour. Oh, I'll say honour, yes. But we know that the risk throughout the state is different. On the screen, we have a range of landscapes that you have probably seen throughout Victoria. We did put a couple specific to Timboon in there as well. We have grassland, bushland, mountainous forest and farmland. And around Timboon, I think you have each of those scenarios. We've moved on to the map of districts for the purpose of weather and fire danger ratings. Your town and area of Timboon are in the southwest region, so it's there with the blue-grey colour. When weather or fire danger ratings are given, these are the districts to which they refer. So when you're listening to the radio or looking at signage, you want it to be southwest region. Another thing we need to take into consideration is the seasonal outlook. This describes the overall weather trend for what's happening in your weather district. Do we have it?
No, it's disappeared.
Well, anyway, I can talk to it. If we stay on the Victoria slide, it's the seasonal outlook for spring 2021 shows increased risk of grass fires. The latest weather data shows our part of Victoria is forecast to have a wet spring, and indeed that's been happening, probably not today, but any time from tonight onwards, it's going to rain again. This is predicted to lead to continued strong grass growth. and the potential of increased grass fire conditions once the vegetation dries out. So the CFA vegetation managers are looking at exactly that, how dry is the grass, all the various indicators that they have of that. So we should be going to our local vegetation slide. How's that working out, Garth?
There you go.
All right, and Katie, I'll ask you for a little information in a minute too. Timboon and its surrounds have large areas of grassed paddocks, some areas of bushland and woodland, and of course you do have trees along borders of, if not paddocks, then certainly farms. You need to understand the risks with fast-moving grass fires because you live near grasslands. Katie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I was just talking to my first lieutenant earlier today, and we were talking about fire danger rating for this year, and you talked about it being a wet spring. It certainly is that. So we were predicting between us that the fire danger rating may not come in November like it has other years, and it could be closer to December. Talking about local vegetation, you are correct. Yes, we have all of those things, but particularly in Timboon, I see the picture in the bottom right-hand corner there of the trestle bridge, and you all know it's a lovely area that we have, but it's certainly a very volatile corridor that we would be quite concerned about. If the fire occurred further out, then it's a very neat corridor for fire to come along the rail trail towards Timboon.
Yes, Katie, if you look at the picture in the bottom left, you'll notice the distillery creamery too, and that's the other end of that wick. Yeah, is actually the distillery and the ice creamery and the end of the Timboon rail trail there in Timboon.
Yes, Garth, and that gives you a little bit more of an idea of the vegetation there that, you know, would be part of that corridor.
Yes, it's looking lovely and green in that shot. But
that's right.
Yes.
Has that been helpful, Kerry?
Okay, thank you. Right, so if we're talking grass fires, they move very quickly. And with whatever sort of wildfire we're talking about, we're talking embers, ember attack, because embers move ahead of any fire, of course, based on the wind. So the wind direction is very important on those risky days. Trees on road reserves and bush reserves will generate embers, spreading the fire, creating numerous small fires ahead of the main front. Uphill slopes on undulating land will cause the fire to speed up and move in unexpected directions, for example, up a slope and across the direction of the wind. Narrow, unmade roads with trees and scrub along them makes for poor and dangerous access and egress. And overall, that means if a fire started in the area, there are a lot of things that it could burn, and it could grow and move very quickly. We have another poll.
oh, yeah, sorry.
This one should have one question in it. This one should have one question in it.
It does.
So again, your answers are anonymous. You only get the ratings. What are some things that could make your local area a high risk area? This question is multiple choice, so you can choose any that appeal to you as a good answer to that question.
Well, as many as you like. Yeah.
Okay, and another 10 seconds on that one. My clock has developed a very loud tick, so let's say that that's 10 seconds. I'll end the poll and share the results. Okay, so the majority is saying high fuel load, high tourist area in the summer, and I did leave a picture of something indicating a tourist, a bicycle, I think, in one of those photographs. Numerous grass fires, narrow winding roads, and tree limbs hanging over. So in country areas, some or all of those are typical, and for Timboon, you've highlighted that, yes, to some degree or other, these could assist with a risk. I shall stop sharing. Take that away. We'll have a look at our local brigade capacity. So in Timboon, the population in 2016, I got it from the census, was 1,202, beautifully exact. Your brigade, there are 583 dwellings, and your brigade has 2 red trucks, 1 pumper, 1 tanker, rather new. And we're envious, of course, in other brigades because you have a ute as well. But I just put the 2 red trucks there to acknowledge. With that in mind, if a fire started, is it a good idea to expect one of those red trucks to come up your driveway and advise you what to do and help you out with your property? What do you think? What do you think, Katie?
Well, if I could use an example, on the St. Pat's Day fires, we were called out with heavy hearts. We left Timboon at about 9:30 at night, and we didn't return till 7 o'clock the next morning.
Wow.
So that was very difficult. We were told we had to go, and we didn't feel great about leaving Timboon unattended. So sometimes we don't have a say over where we go. We certainly have to go where we're needed. So as you can see, that's a lot of properties that and people in Timboon that we left behind. So that's an example that no, there will be no big red truck at your front door if there's a fire. We just don't have enough to go around, and often our resources are taken elsewhere.
Well, that's right, because where there are fires, you'll be called to the fire front, I expect, and have very little to people in the town or people on the outskirts of the town, unless they're really under direct threat in the area that you've already been sent to. So this is the reason that the CFA is promoting people prepared and have a plan of what to do in a fire situation, if a fire started in the area, or indeed if every indication is there that there could be a fire. Right, we move on to what to expect from fire. We know that Victoria is very fire prone, rating very high in the world list of top 10. And of course, 2 summers ago, we saw lots of images on the media and indeed in the west of the state that there were fires as well on TV. But unless you've already had the experience, it's hard to imagine what it would be like to be actually threatened by fire. With grassland areas, there can be a number of threats to the house and property. Direct flame impact. Dry fuel on the property allows running fires to burn right up to the house. So the CFA advises that you have fire breaks, it could be driveways or large areas where there's very little vegetation, or means to break the continuity of the fuel, even veggie patches and gravel paths. I've already mentioned Ember Attacks. So nearby or even distant burning bush or trees, depending on the lie of the land, and as Katie has highlighted, that corridor, send embers onto properties and houses, starting numerous small fires in dry fuel around the houses. Ember attack is the biggest cause of property loss during fire. We spoke about fuel types in Timboon. You've got some of everything there. So this is very relevant to people living in the area, and Garth has put up a slide.
I have the animation there. Do you want me to start the animation?
We will have an animation in about 3 seconds. This is one of those where if you feel that it's going to have an impact on you emotionally, please look away.
During a bushfire, embers will reach your home long before the flames do. Ember attacks are the most common way that houses catch fire. Embers are burning leaves, twigs and pieces of bark. They help the bushfire spread by starting spot fires ahead of the main fire front. Short-distance ember attacks happen when leaves and small pieces of bark are blown from burning trees. The intense shower of sparks that forms fills the air with hot, burning embers, which will land on nearby vegetation and properties. The hot embers can easily land and get into your clothes and burn your skin, eyes and airways. Small fires will start all around you and quickly become uncontrollable. The resulting chaos creates confusion as the fire seems to come from many directions, meaning it will be difficult to make good decisions about your safety. The experience will be physically exhausting and emotionally traumatic. Long-distance ember attack is caused by large bushfires that generate intense heat. As the hot air rises, it forms a column of smoke that sucks in air like a vacuum, increasing the intensity of the fire. The updraft in the column lifts embers, like large pieces of burning ribbon bark, hundreds of metres into the air, where strong winds can carry them many kilometres beyond the fire front. On Black Saturday, embers travelled more than 30 kilometres ahead of the main fire. When these embers land, they often start fires where leaves naturally accumulate, like in gutters, doorways and garden beds. So while you might think you're safe when a bushfire is far away, embers can fall from the sky and land around your home long before you even know there's a fire. But remember, your home isn't the only thing under threat during an ember attack. By the time you realise the danger, it might be too late as escape routes become jammed. Embers can also start fires on roads and block them completely, making late evacuation dangerous or impossible. That's why leaving early, before a fire starts, is always your safest option.
Thank you, Garth. We hope that has helped explain how fires spread. And again, I'll promote the idea that leaving early before a fire starts, breakfast time, the night before, is always the safest option. You won't be going to experience an ember attack if you're not in the area. We have another video now. This one goes for 2.5 minutes, so it's a little shorter, and it's about the effect of radiant heat. So even grass fires can produce enough radiant heat to kill or injure people. It's not actually the flames that are lethal during a fire. People often experience the negative effects of radiant heat long before the flames reach them. If you think you might find this distressing, now's the time to move away from the screen. And as I said, 2.5 minutes. Thanks, Garth.
Victoria is one of the most bushfire-prone parts of the world. Every summer, bushfires threaten properties and lives. But did you know it's not the flames that kill most bushfire victims? No, it's the radiant heat. Most victims die from the effects of radiant heat long before they're reached by the flames. Radiant heat is what you feel when you sit next to a campfire. If a campfire heats up to 2 kilowatts per square metre, you'll feel that it's too hot and will want to move back from the fire. If you don't, this amount of radiant heat is enough to cause burns and blisters in as little as 40 seconds. At 12 kilowatts, it can cause some materials like dry timber to ignite. A bushfire can reach 100 kilowatts, and the effects can be truly catastrophic. For humans, radiant heat can cause burns from 100 metres away and cause a dangerous increase in body temperature. Radiant heat can cause the rapid onset of heat stroke. Heat stroke damages your brain, meaning you won't be able to concentrate to make good decisions as the fire arrives. Other impacts include severe damage of internal organs and death. There are some things you can do if you're caught in a fire. Cover your skin with long-sleeved natural fibre clothing, like wool. It's also useful to know that radiant heat only travels in straight lines and can't bend around corners. So, sheltering behind or inside solid structures may help protect you. But be aware, radiant heat will travel straight through glass. The best defence against radiant heat is a simple one. If you're not anywhere near a bushfire, its radiant heat can't hurt you. Leaving early is always your safest option.
Thank you. So we do hope that that has helped explain why radiant heat is so dangerous. There's no moving away from the level of danger here. Fire can be lethal. It's significant, yes, radiant heat significantly affects your ability to think clearly and make good decisions. And this is why it's important to leave early and also to have a plan, a written plan, rather than having one in the head that can go all sorts of ways under a threat. After major fires, it's common for the CFA to interview people about their experience, to find out what happened and hear their stories, find out what they would do in the future. On the screen, you can see some quotes from interviews and at least one from the general area of Timboon.
That's actually from the fire Katie was just talking about, the Compton there. That was part of the St Patrick's Day fires.
We're about to share a short video as well with excerpts from some interviews for you to view. This one takes slightly less than a minute, but again, if you think you might find it distressing, please move away from the screen for the duration of this little video.
Ten years ago, when all the dams were full and the tanks were full and there was plenty of water, I probably would have stayed and I would have died.
Nothing went the way we might have anticipated.
Whatever preparations you put into place, you only need something small to go wrong.
You know, in future, I don't think we'd want to put the kids through that sort of trauma, I guess. Yeah, wouldn't put the kids through that again.
If it was my choice, I wouldn't stay again. If we had another day like that, if I had the opportunity to get out, I would go before the fire even got here.
Well, so what does this mean for you? Fires will be stressful and traumatic situations that you need to plan and be prepared for. Exit roads may be blocked, and that's where the comment about tourists in the area is particularly important, because they won't know the roads as well as the locals, and that's one potential source of chaos. Ember attack causes fires to spread quickly. Radiant heat is the biggest killer, and decision making may be impacted. So leaving early before a fire starts is the message we're really trying to promote. we have another poll, which Garth will put up, asking, what do you think would impact your ability to make good decisions? There should just be one question in this poll. And it's multiple choice as well. All right, we'll give that another 10 seconds, according to my ticking clock. Okay, and I'll end that poll now and share the results so you can see what I can see, which is that it's almost an all of the above response. We have 100% for stress, impacting abilities to make good decisions, rapidly changing situation, definitely, things not going to plan because we're on planet Earth and that's how things work, and communication breakdown because communication lines will be being used by the services. They'll be busy with people contacting whoever they need to in emergency situations, and certainly not having enough time. So that is all very relevant to a little scenario that we'll be having in a little while. I shall stop sharing. And we'll move on to how do you know if there is a fire? How do you know if a fire has started or if one is going to start? So if you open up the chat and just give me a simple answer as to how you would know if there were to be a fire in your area. If you are a member of the brigade, you probably have an advantage. So if anyone puts their answers in chat.
Emergency Act, yes, absolutely. We're getting a couple of votes for the Emergency Act. Radio is very good. Yeah. Smoke, absolutely.
Right, so we all have ways of knowing that there is a fire, and it was good to hear the radio and the VIC Emergency Act being mentioned because they are very credible sources of information, which is something we'll be highlighting in a little while. I've got a picture of the fire danger rating up on the screen, and we certainly hope that you have seen this before. It will be displayed on television and social media, especially if you're following Brigade news, and of course signs on the side of the road. But what is it? There is a bit of confusion around this, so let's find out what people think it is. And again, we have another poll. What does the fire danger rating mean? There are 3 questions in this poll, so you may need to scroll down to get to the third one. What does the fire danger rating mean? Does anyone know how many code red days have happened in this region in the last 5 years? And does anyone know how many severe or extreme days have been? We'll just call that
how many extreme days have happened. That's my typo there, sorry about that.
And again, these responses are anonymous. We can't see who has answered what. And the responses will generally be in the zone anyway. Another 10 seconds. And I'll end the poll, share the results. Okay, so the fire danger rating for the CFA is an indicator of how bad a fire would be should one start. So that second answer there is more correct, and of course the first one is in the general zone. Does anyone know how many code red days have happened in this region in the last 5 years? Garth, do you know?
0 is the correct answer. There have been no code red days in Southwest since Black Saturday.
So
there's been some in the north of the state, but none in Southwest or Central for that matter.
Those code red days get a lot of publicity, but the important thing to remember is that they are specific to certain regions. So you may have heard quite a lot about code red days, but for the last 5 years, we've been very fortunate in Timboon to not experience one. And what were you saying, Garth, that it's how many severe or extreme days?
Extreme days, yes.
Okay.
And I don't have an exact number, but it's probably somewhere around the 4 to 6 mark. We generally get 1 or 2 extreme days per year, and somewhere between 6 and 12 severe days per year. Interesting, yeah, Katie's just commented St Patrick's Day wasn't code red. St Patrick's Day was actually severe. And Christmas Day, when Wye River lost 153 houses, was very high. So things can happen apart from not just on the very bad days, but yeah, these are the days when fires will actually be worse. So that's I guess is what we're saying. If they happen, they will be worse.
That's correct. Ooh. I'm skipping forward here a little bit. Yes, I think so. Oh, right, yes, the fire danger ratings. They give us an indication according to all sorts of information, certainly weather, winds, dryness of the fuel, quite a few other things, to assist us to see what sort of a fire would happen if one were to start. So, or how difficult one would be to put out. Of course, there are no guarantees, but with so little or so few extreme days and code red days in the area, why wouldn't people leave? We're not asking them to leave for weeks on end, but just not be in the area on the day. There are sources of information. I mentioned this before. This slide represents the many sources of information we have. And of course, sometimes it can even seem like this with a lot of information incoming, giving opinions on certain things. But even if we don't use them all, there's so much information through various sources. How do we know what to believe? Or how do we know what's accurate? You already mentioned that actually in your response to the poll, listening to the radio, using the VIC Emergency Act, and just staying across what's happening in the Timboon area. Yes. The VIC Emergency App is particularly good because it will give the fire danger ratings 3 or 4 days ahead of any particular day. So there's plenty of time to get things sorted out and revise and practice those plans. We have a slide that gives us the formal sources of accurate information, and we've mentioned a few. There's your VIC Emergency App down in the bottom left-hand corner. Local news, online information, not social media, but news sites, for example. And then there are other sources for people that have perhaps hearing difficulties or
language, to speak language other than English, also interpreter service. Also the Facebook and Twitter, the emergency services do have Facebook and Twitter feeds, like the CFA, SES, and Victoria Police all have their social media pages. If people like to get information via social media, they can certainly follow the emergency services on those.
Thanks, Carl. And further to that, we have the advice and warning system. So if when you're looking at maps, for example, on the VIC Emergency Act, you may see that an advice has issued. And that's where there is an incident occurring or an incident has occurred, and to access information and monitor the conditions to see how they may impact on you. It can also be used as a notification that activity in the area has subsided and is no longer a danger to you. So something that has been active is winding up. Watch and Act, the orange one, is it signifies that an emergency is developing nearby. You need to take action now to protect yourself and others. And an emergency warning means, that's the red one, you're in imminent danger, need to take action immediately, you will be impacted. However, you'll see on your screens as well that we've advised that you don't wait for a warning. That can be a timing issue. By the time an incident control centre has issued a warning, it means that it's gone through the approval levels and before it's been posted, and there are time delays. So again, acting early according to your plan is the thing to do. Evacuation notices can indeed come out, and quite often that can happen too late, and we have a little scenario to demonstrate that. There's also community information, which basically are updates for local areas that have been or are being impacted. They can be used as notification, generally describe the activity of the emergency services, but again, don't wait for a warning, enact your plan according to the trigger that you have sorted out in a calm time.
So you might actually be ahead of the warnings, as Kerry just mentioned. I will just note also, Katie, thank you very much. You always have a battery operated radio available in case internet and telephone lines have been compromised. Timboon, I know, is in quite a delicate situation, could we say? It's nestled in a beautiful spot there, but that does mean that things can get compromised fairly easily. It's sort of limited ways in for the electricity and limited ways in for the signals for the internet, etc. So very easy for things to get cut off. And I will just mention that the evacuation warnings will generally only come, normally it's an emergency warning, and the evacuation warning will only come if the emergency services have deemed that there is a safe evacuation path, and the evacuation warning will come with a clear direction on how to follow that path. But as far as being ahead of the warnings, I'll just have a little scenario here. A fire has started, and it's starting to build up a little head of steam. It's getting itself all worked up. It's pretty hot and windy. 5 minutes later, somebody's noticed it. They've rang through 000. Fantastic, great job. Katie's pager's just about to go off in about 5.5 minutes. She'll be heading down to the station, jumping on that big red truck. But it's going to take her a couple of minutes to get down there and, you know, get a full crew together. They've got to get all their gear on. They're heading down there. They're having a look. The fire's getting a bit bigger. 10 minutes have passed. She's got to the fire. She's going, oh, this is dangerous. This is heading towards some houses. We better get an advice message released. So she's radioed through to Firecom. They've contacted the duty officer. They've managed to get an advice message set up quite quickly, notified the township that there's a threat. By this time, oh, it's already gone past your house. This is your house at the 18-minute mark. The fire hit your house. You haven't had time to act. Now, at 20 minutes, it's been updated to an emergency warning because Katie's radioed through and said, hey, it's getting worse. It's going to impact houses. But guess what? Your house was on the edge. It's already been impacted. You might be ahead of the warnings. 30 minutes, it's a big fire, it's passed through. So what do we do if we're ahead of the warnings? I'll hand you back to Kerry with this slide.
Thanks, Garth. We advise that people stay attuned to the situation and use their senses. So the idea of shutting curtains and turning on air conditioners isn't appropriate in this situation. We advise that you stay alert, use the senses that nature has given you, sight, hearing, smell, as well as your devices or your communication devices, and be prepared to enact parts of your plan that you have prepared earlier.
And yes, you're all across that. You were talking in the chat when we were asking you about how you know if there's a fire. You were talking about smelling the smoke. You were talking about seeing lights and sirens going past. Smelling smoke. So you're obviously all across that.
Right. So what do we do next? Up until now, we've talked about the risks in your local area, what it would be like to experience a fire, and ways to stay informed and know if there is a fire. So now we're going to run through a hypothetical situation so that we can see how this plays out in a scenario. Our slide shows us that it's 8 a.m, let's say, on a Wednesday morning. You look outside and you can see it's already hot and windy. The morning news is reporting that today is a day of extreme fire danger rating. You jump in the car to shoot off to work or into Timboon or perhaps a different town. You can see little branches falling from the trees and feel the heat coming through the glass windows. It's about lunchtime and you overhear people talking about a fire that has started quite near Timboon. You jump on the VIC Emergency app to find out whereabouts, and you see that the fire has started a short distance from your home. You jump in the car and start heading home to make sure that everything's okay. But as you get closer to your property, you see the road is blocked by police. Naturally, you wind down your window and the police advise that it isn't safe to go into the area as the fire is burning and the trees have come down, or some trees have come down on the road. You will have to find somewhere else to go until the road is reopened. So what do you do? We have a poll.
Just poll. Okay.
Yes, 3 questions. And again, we can't see your answers, so feel free to put in whatever you think. Where would you be on an average Wednesday in summer? Thinking about summertime, last summer, would you have been prepared to spend a few nights away from home in an emergency situation like this? And last summer, did you have an emergency kit packed with clothes, important documents, photos, medicine, etc.? And again, our 10 seconds. A speedy 10 seconds, I'm ending the poll and sharing the results. So people don't take holidays in Timboon, it's so lovely there, Go.
Yes,
they work or they're at
place to
home.
be in summer.
They're working or at home, occupied and busy. And we have 100% people telling us they would not have been prepared to spend a few nights away from home. And about half people did have an emergency kit packed at least. So there is a start of a plan already. Perhaps having a bag ready to pick up and go, or indeed in the car like mine. I shall stop sharing. And we will move on. Our scenario continues. I'm sorry, I'm a little technical delay here. Okay, we're at the same day. except this time when you jump on the VIC Emergency Act, you see that the fire is still quite a while away. The little yellow shaded area on the map on the phone doesn't quite reach your house. So you think to yourself, I've got enough time to run home and grab some important stuff. So you drive home. And as you get out of the car and you're in your driveway, you can smell smoke. And it is still really windy and very hot. You check the app again and you see the little yellow triangle on your screen and it's still an advice message. You should have enough time. So frantically moving around the house, you grab your important things and start running them out to the car. And every now and again, you check on your phone to see if you're being told to evacuate. There's still nothing, so you've still got time, haven't you? You're running through a list in your head. Passport, medications, birth certificate, pet cage, water. This is taking a lot longer than you thought it would. And then you notice little streams, patches of smoke coming up from the garden bed, and that pile of leaves that you've been meaning to do something with has started to take off. Embers are falling near your home. You feel that surge of adrenaline pump through your body, heart rate is up, you're out of time. What do? Are you going to go somewhere? Can you drive out of your street? Is there somewhere safe you can go? Or do you stay home? Do you need to seek shelter yet? Do you grab the garden hose, try and put out those small fires? Is it important to put on a cotton shirt? These are all decisions that you would have to make, and with very little time. Do you have kids? Are there other people to consider? Neighbours who depend on you? What about pets or horses? Have they been moved? And what about if a tree has come down and blocks the road or indeed the driveway? So this feels like a lot to take in right now. They're very realistic scenarios. It probably feels like I'm bombarding you with questions and you mightn't have an answer to them or haven't considered these scenarios. That's without the stress of there actually being a fire. We're on a webinar. So in the chat, what is one thing that you could have done in this scenario to avoid being in this situation? What's one thing that could have been done differently? Do we have any suggestions, Garth?
Nothing's come through yet. I'm sure I can hear keyboards tapping away. Had a better plan. Yes, that's a good start.
We'll have a plan, an actual plan.
Prepare. Yes, absolutely.
And indeed, they're very good suggestions, because if we move to the next slide, people are preempting the responses. If you have a plan, you will know what you would do. May not be in that situation in the first place. If you stay informed, that feeds into your plan. What do you do? And of course, you will have learned how to prepare your property properly. CFA has booklets and pamphlets, and indeed a bushfire planning workshop. We have a poll.
We do. No, we don't.
Oh.
No, we don't have another poll until we finish.
All right. Well, the poll would have asked. There are things you can do to prevent this from happening to you. That scenario of being caught spinning in circles at the property. Know what you'll do on a bad fire day. Have a plan. Stay informed and use that information. Check credible sources like the VIC Emergency Act, and make sure your property is prepared. Even if you don't plan to be there, you'll have security of mind. And again, the CFA has publications. You'll be taken after this webinar to a CFA page that where these things are available.
Yes, so hopefully when you leave this webinar, you'll get directed automatically to a CFA page where there's a little bit of a questionnaire and how you felt it went, but also there's a whole lot of things you can download, a whole lot of brochures you can download, booklets, information, and also you can, if you were interested in further programs, you can put your interest in further programs and you'll get notified further on that when they become available.
Well, it sounded like some people did already have a safety plan for the fire situation. Given COVID-19, there are some considerations. So you may plan to travel or go some particular place. If that's part of your plan, it would be worth checking whether the COVID-19 restrictions mean that that place is closed, for example, cinemas. It would be worthwhile considering alternative arrangements if the plan is to stay with elderly relatives or people who are more susceptible to the virus. So let's have a look at what could happen if that plan doesn't work. So our next slide says survival options if your plan fails. We're getting close to the end, but it is worth considering this information. Hopefully, if ever there is a fire, your plans do work. Now, first thing is to wear the right gear on the day. We've all seen images on the TV with people wearing shorts and thongs, holding a garden hose. Please don't, because your skin is very important. So it's important to wear natural fibres, covering up as much skin as possible, wearing solid shoes to protect yourself from the things that we've already learned about from heat, things that can fly around, and of course heat stroke. Another option is to protect yourself from radiant heat by hiding behind solid objects such as rocks, water tank, behind or inside a house. It's likely that these may still catch on fire, but they will afford you at least a few seconds protection before you need to move on. And some places have bushfire place of last resort. Katie, I didn't check.
Yes, I can tell you because I had to know. It is the Timboon Hall, of course. And it is not outside in the car park, it is inside the Timboon Hall. So I'm not quite sure. I assume somebody will be there with a key to open it up for you. That's very nice of them. If not, you're in trouble. But that is the place if all your plans have failed and if you have nowhere left to go, that is your last resort. But it is a bushfire place of last resort. It's not your plan. It's not plan B, it's not plan C. It's where you go when all your plans have failed. And hopefully it'll be a place where you can survive. It won't be pleasant. There'll be no Red Cross there with tea and cup, tea and scone, but hopefully it'll be a place where you can survive and be a little more comfortable than if you were stuck on your own. That's about all I promise.
Well, we have some following images. They may be distressing for some people, especially if they've already experienced fire. So again, we'll be spending a couple of seconds on this. If you need to look away, please do. I've got driving and sheltering in a car. That's the one. The CFA advised that you don't drive through fire, and there are several reasons. Heavy smoke makes it impossible to see and is disorienting. So making decisions about where to go, navigating, virtually impossible. A vehicle could hit a tree or have some other kind of incident or accident. Sheltering in the car from fire is possible, but it's incredibly risky. Cars are designed to transport you from A to B, not to protect you from fire. Also, being in a vehicle on the road means that the emergency services don't have a smoother route as they would prefer. They can't get in or around vehicles to fight fires or to help other people in need. So staying with the plan planning to not be in the area on risky days really is starting to look like a very appropriate thing to do. Do we have a poll, Garth?
Do we have a closing poll?
We
Yes,
have a
we do.
closing poll.
And while I'm launching that, I will also say there's a question here about where to get heat-resistant vented goggles. I've never had to purchase them because I've only ever used the CFA issued ones, but I would expect that if you did a little bit of research with Mr. Google and Googled goggles, not goggled Googles, you may well come up with an answer. There are specialist online stores that do sell fire safety equipment, so they will probably have goggles, I would expect. Obviously, if anybody, Katie or Kerry, if you have any better ideas as to where to get goggles.
Your response is exactly what I've heard. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a closing questionnaire and then we have a couple more slides about where to seek assistance should you require it. And we have, I shall give it another 10 seconds. Did the meeting give you a better understanding of bushfire risk in your local area? And we had a number confirm what we already knew, which is fantastic, and a positive yes response as well. You can see what I can see on this poll. And would you recommend the program? Yes, thank you so much. That's fantastic, because the more that we can promote our messages, we hope the safer people will be. I will stop sharing and we'll move on to some other.
How to contact your local district.
Oh, thanks, Gar. This is district headquarter contact. Should you have any comments about the information we've covered tonight, and if there are things that you would rather not take to your local brigade, of course, we have Katie here, and you probably know members, whether they're relatives or friends or neighbours. So there's the contact there in Colac as your regional or district headquarters.
Also, there was an email address when you signed up for this session tonight. There was an email address there, Southwest Community Safety. You can always address questions to them as well as to the district headquarters, and of course, as Kerry said, your local brigade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And if this webinar has raised difficult issues for you, support is available, as I mentioned earlier. There are phone numbers on the slide there for Beyond Blue and Lifeline, whose job it is to assist people. So please take advantage of those if you need to. We urge you to be prepared for summer, every summer. Keep yourself and your family safe and prepare your property. Thanks for joining the session. Garth and I, at least, and possibly Katie, will stay online if anyone has any further questions. Thank you very much.